Hello again, everyone. If you join me this morning my time, for the police press conference, well, it was just about morning into afternoon, then you'll know what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about the Nicola Bulley case. There was a press conference this morning, and I want to do some follow-ups on that. Those of you who've been waiting in the chat for me to start, you will notice that I actually originally scheduled this for 7 p.m. my time and then changed it because I'm heavily invested in the Alec Murdoch trial today. It's very good today. And I was trying to gauge when the judge would let them have a lunch break. And the judge let them have a lunch break earlier than I thought he might, because they were in the middle of some really juicy testimony. So I put this forward, and then I could go back to the Alec Murdoch trial when they get back from lunch. So we've got about an hour to get this covered, because it's very good testimony today. Before I say a few hellos, I just want to give Sean D the award for the silliest comment of this stream. Coming in, hitting hard, Sean, there. Alcohol problem. Why? Because you've seen her with a glass of wine in her hand. You make me sick. You make me sick, Sean. People like you make me want to spew. They want to make me spew my cake in a bowl that I have for my tea because I've got no food in. I've got beans, but I have beans for my dinner. So anyway, right, Sean, you don't know my channel, do you? Because I don't make unfounded claims. I do not make judgments about people's issues based on photographs of them with a glass of wine. So this did come up. Miss Thing Bad, or B-A-D, got this right. The alcohol subject came up in the beginning and was stomped out immediately. What if? Vulnerable state. Well, you didn't hear me talking about a potential alcohol problem. In fact, you might have heard me saying I do not want to talk about things like this with no evidence at all. The accusation was, or the speculation was, that she'd taken her own life because she was an alcoholic, and there was no evidence of that early on in the case. So, Sean, if you're still in the chat, you're not welcome here, so sod off. All right. Okay, so Nicola Bulley does have an alcohol problem, sadly. And Lancashire Police, after the press conference, those of you who saw it, either on my channel, or you may have seen it on another channel, or you may have seen it live on the BBC. I don't know where you watched it, but if you watched it, then you will know that Lancashire Constabulary made a very significant comment that set the Twitter sphere alight. I only had a quick look at Twitter. I've not checked any other social media. I've been stuck in Alec Murdoch all afternoon. I've done absolutely nothing with my day. So yeah, it set the Twitter sphere alight. What do they mean by high risk, vulnerable? The specific phrasing that was used, and I am paraphrasing here, the specific phrasing that was used was that after speaking to her partner, Paul, so this was the morning that she disappeared, so the morning of the 27th of January, that they recognised her as a high risk and vulnerable case. So we had some speculation in the chat after the press conference what this means, and I gave a broad definition of what a vulnerable person would be if they were in a police interview as a victim or an alleged perpetrator of crime. Police have a, for the want of a better word, a flag that goes on the record to state that they are a vulnerable person. So if that record's accessed in again, or there's further interviews, then anybody coming, working on that record will know that they're vulnerable. And it's a pretty broad remit, I have to say. And it's generally to do with things like disabilities, mental health, certain medical conditions that might cause you to change your behavior or to knock yourself out, like epilepsy, or have a significant medical episode like unmanaged asthma or something like that, right? A medical condition that could affect you in while you're in police custody, while you're in their care, shall we say, because it could be a victim of crime as well. And so Lancashire Constabulary made this comment. So we had this discussion about that. And I said, look, I don't know whether that's the same in a missing persons case as it is in a crime. I don't know. And I haven't worked with the police for 10 years. So I don't know, right? We also considered whether it was to do with the environmental conditions, that she was, her belongings and Willow, the dog, were found right near a river. So there was an environmental concern there, that she could have fallen in the river. So the risk of serious harm is big when there is a big environmental risk factor right there staring them in the face. But yes, we can see your comments, Laura. Yes, we can see your comments. So you don't need to worry about that. Somebody else worried earlier on about being shadow banned. No one's shadow banned. You can't be shadow banned. You're either banned or you're not, blocked or you're not. So I don't know why people worry. Anyway, so Lancashire Constabulary, in a very unusual move, have confirmed what they meant by high risk vulnerable. I'm presuming that this has been okayed by the family for them to release this. I'm assuming that. So this is in ITV News, but it's all over the mainstream media right now. It's breaking news about 40 minutes ago. Okay, so she did suffer from alcohol problems. So this is only a short article, and maybe more will come out later, or maybe we don't know. We don't need more. Maybe this gives us all we need to know. But it just clarifies what the police meant, so we can stop this speculation now about what it might have meant. They've told us what it meant. So Nicola had ongoing issues with the menopause that caused alcohol issues to resurface, police said. In the unusual step, Lancashire Police clarified why they deemed the mother of two as high risk after she went missing on Friday, 27th of January. In a statement following a press conference, the force said, sadly, it is clear from speaking to Paul and the family that Nicola had in the past suffered from significant issues with alcohol, which were brought on by her ongoing struggles with the menopause, and that these struggles had resurfaced over recent months. This caused some real challenges for Paul and the family. As a result of those issues, a response car staffed by both police and health professionals attended a report of concern for welfare at Nicola's home address on the 10th of January, so just 17 days before she went missing. No one had been arrested in relation to this incident, but it is being investigated. It is an unusual step for us to take to go into this level of detail about someone's private life, but we felt it was important to clarify what we meant when we talked about vulnerabilities to avoid any further speculation or misinterpretation. We have explained to Nicola's family why we have released this further information, and we would ask that their privacy be respected at this difficult time. Okay, so the police are, the family are aware of what the police are releasing. Now, I assumed it would be with their consent, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's with their consent. It's possibly why Paul has changed his name on Facebook. What Paul doesn't realise is that you need to change the @ in the URL, or else people searching for Paul Ansell are going to find him anyway, even if you change your name. So maybe he wanted to keep his profile active so that he could talk to people by Messenger. Yeah, Paul, if you ever see this, just changing your name on Facebook isn't going to make you invisible or anonymous. People can still find it. You need to change the @ to something completely different in the URL. It's in the settings somewhere. I'm not really a fan of Facebook, honestly. So I can't be any more help than that. But yeah, that's what you need to do. Okay, so it makes sense now why he did that on Facebook, because the police have been a little bit optimistic, shall we say, that this is going to avoid further speculation or misinterpretation. This is now going to increase the speculation. The detective who spoke at the press conference, Rebecca Smith, she said in her 29 years of policing, she hasn't seen anything like the social media response, you know, for misinformation, for hurtful comments. And yeah, that's what high profile cases receive. They receive ridiculous, hurtful comments, unfortunately. So I wasn't going to ever speculate on this, ever, even though I was aware it had been talked about as a potential, you know, did she take her own life because she was alcoholic, or was she drunk and fell in the river because she was drunk? And no way am I going to go into that kind of speculations unless it's a formal statement by the police or the family directly, not via someone's YouTube channel or other means, like Joe Blogs down the street knows a person who knows somebody's cousin, you know, that kind of, you know, third hand, fourth hand passing down of information. I don't go with that. It's honestly why I don't dig into people's social media too much when I'm covering a case. I'm a very, very bad journalist. I would make a rubbish journalist. But I don't dig into people's personal lives. It's only if it's made plain and clear and it's out in the open that I will discuss it. So this is now an opportunity to discuss this issue. Now, on the 27th of January, so just 17 days after this thing that happened that resulted in a police response and a health professional going to the home, that was the 10th of January, and then the 27th of January, she goes missing. So the speculations now are going to be, you know, did she run away? Was she having an affair? That's all out there anyway. Did they have a fight and Paul murdered her? And I think we can safely say that's not the case, because she was there. Right, because if you want to believe that Paul murdered her, then you've got to assume that it wasn't Nicola who took the kids to school. It wasn't Nicola that people at the school spoke to. And it was, right? It was her. People at the school spoke to her. Her kids knew their mother was taking them to school. So even though the CCTV images of, you know, from the Ring doorbell weren't really clear, we can safely say that that was Nicola who took the kids to school and Willow for a walk. People saw her at the school, and people saw her who knew her, who recognized her on the walk. So it can't be the case that Paul did a Chris Watts and she was already dead, and all of this has become a big drama, right? A big drama to play out on social media. She's missing when actually she's been murdered. No, that is not the case. Grandma Bunny, member for 2 months. Nobody has said she was drunk. Correct. Absolutely correct. Yes. And thank you for your ongoing support, Grandma Bunny. So what do we mean when we say somebody has got an alcohol problem that has resurfaced, right? Menopause at 45. Some people do have menopause at 45. I'm way older than her, and I've not had my menopause yet, and I'm actually looking forward to it. But I don't know. I'm as regular as clockwork. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Some people do have an earlier menopause than others. It's probably genetic, partly environment. I don't know what causes the menopause. You went through the menopause at 30. So that would be a very early menopause. Oh, Googled it. There you go, Lucy. Lucy coming in with a Google comment. 45 to 55. All right. So, yeah. Went at 36, 43. Got a 50. So that's 50's within the normal range. 35. So all you early birds, 44. Mum went through it at 38. Where's that comment not shown? Oh, there you go. I was 44. Mum went through it at 38. Can't remember how old my mother was, because she had a terrible time with it. She had a terrible time with the menopause. She was depressed and terrible time. Karen, member for 2 months. Alcoholism can mess up your mental health big time. It absolutely can. It absolutely can. So, Janie J, new member. Welcome, Janie J, to the Secret Agents Club. Welcome. So, yeah, so a combination of the menopause and an alcohol issue resurfacing, to me, screams mental health, right? So I don't think I'm going to go down the she was drunk at 8:30 in the morning when she took the kids to school. And I don't think I want to say that she was swigging a bottle of whiskey as she was walking along. So she was sober when she took the kids to school, but she was swigging a bottle of whiskey or white lining or something while she was walking around the field. Because to me, having an alcohol problem and a potential mental health issue doesn't mean to say that something unfortunate can befall you only if you're drunk. Right? Now, obviously, if this was the case where people had reported seeing her with a bottle of something that looked like alcohol, then we could have that conversation. Because, we could have that conversation. Some people are so bad that they need alcohol to be normal. I mean, I knew someone who is actually still alive, and I've no idea how he is. He's like in his 80s right now. And he had a really, really bad alcohol problem while he was working. And his tipple was gin. And he worked as kind of an electrical engineer, like on highways and motorways, like doing things like, like road signs, those like, anyway, whatever he did, it was quite intricate. And he was always drunk. But you didn't know. You did not know, right? He needed alcohol to be functional. He always had to have alcohol in his system to be functional. If he'd have got stopped by the police and he got breathalyzed during his job, he'd not only have lost his license, he'd have lost his job. Honestly, right? But that's what he did. That's what he did. Now, it's quite possible. I don't want to speculate too heavily on this. It's quite possible that, you know, somebody who has an alcohol problem is that kind of alcoholic, but that's really, really major. That's really major. Like the average alcoholic, well, not the average, the average person with an alcohol problem, let's just say that, doesn't need to be drunk all the time. So it's just that when they drink, things happen. When they drink, they can't stop drinking. When they drink, they go on binges. When they drink, they have a complete personality change and a mental health crisis, right? So I'm imagining that that's kind of maybe what happened when the police were called on the 10th of January, that it resulted in a mental health crisis. Because if a health professional was sent with the police, then it's actually serious. You know, it's serious. You know, the average copper turning up for a domestic dispute doesn't come armed with a mental health or a health professional. They don't, right? They don't. So it would have to be a pretty major thing to happen to have both the police and a medical professional go to the house. So if Nicola had let's say, for example, had an alcohol problem in the past and then started experiencing something like depression, which is very, very common with menopause. My mother had depression during the menopause, and it's treatable, right? But maybe she was struggling with it. Maybe she was struggling with depression, the effects of menopause. Maybe she felt she was too young to go through the menopause. And she was just struggling with it psychologically, struggling with it hormonally. And that resulted in an alcohol issue that she used to have, that she'd beaten, let's say, and I'm just being hypothetical, resurfacing, that she had one drink to make herself feel better or to be sociable or whatever, and that resulted in her not being able to stop and ultimately compounding the problem, because there's never any answers for anybody at the bottom of a bottle. There is no answers at the bottom of a bottle. None, ever, under any circumstances. Alcohol is an evil, evil drug. Right? How alcohol's legal, right? I don't know. And in many, many places, cannabis isn't, because cannabis is a much kinder drug on everybody than alcohol. Alcohol kills. Alcohol ruins lives, and alcohol ruins families. But it's legal. It's socially acceptable to go out and binge drink. Right. And that's why it takes such a long time for people to recognize that they've got a problem, is because it's so socially acceptable. And that's why it's very difficult to quit alcohol, because it's so socially acceptable. I think among any of the common addictions or the substances that people become addicted to, alcohol is the worst, in my opinion. Right. Simply because it's everywhere. It's everywhere. Cigarettes used to be everywhere, right? And yes, cigarettes can ruin your health, but they don't. I guess they ruin your family's health if you sat there smoking, like, you know, in the house. But generally speaking, if you're careful about smoking tobacco, you're not going to ruin anybody else's health except your own. But it's not true with alcohol. And I don't know what it's like where you live, but where we live in the UK, there's been a smoking ban now in like public places and stuff. Like you can smoke outside, you know, so pubs have got like beer gardens and smoking tents, and you know they've worked around it and stuff. But even in shops, cigarettes cannot be displayed. Like in a shop, they can't be displayed. You have to ask for a packet of cigarettes, and like they have to open a cupboard and you have to tell them exactly what you want. No, I don't smoke cigarettes, but vape juice that I vape is freely available. It's all there. It's weird. But alcohol, you can go into any corner shop or supermarket, garage, and there's alcohol. There's bottles of alcohol there. And then, you know, you drink to be sociable. You have a drink at Christmas, and Christmas is the worst time for people who are battling an alcohol addiction, right? So it's hard. It's hard, really hard. It is a depressant. You're right, Jeanette. It is a depressant. So if you're feeling depressed, alcohol is the worst thing you can do, is to have a drink to make yourself feel more sociable, more upbeat. It's not, it's a depressant. It's a depressant. So is this relevant to her disappearance? I guess is the question. Is this relevant to her disappearance? Maybe. And this is why I'm not changing my theory. I still think she's in the river. However, how she got in the river now is questionable. Because I've always said that it would be so easy at that spot. And let's just remind ourselves of how steep that bank is. Just fire up PowerPoint here. Can you see that? Have I shared my screen? Oh, yeah, there we go. I've actually shared my screen. On a screenshot like that, looks very, very, very gentle slope down to the river, and you can see the whole river. But when you look at it like this, still looks quite gentle. When you look at it like this, it still looks okay because the river's right there. However, when you look at it like this, you look at it in relation to people, then you realize how steep and how high that bank actually is. That there's this slope that's okay, right? But imagine running down that slope and then you're not going to be able to stop. If you slip, you're not going to be able to stop yourself. And then you're in the water. So I've always said that this was an accident. And the fact that the phone was on the floor. Now, there's been two different statements made about this phone and where the phone was found. The earlier things that I talked about in my video yesterday said that the phone was found by the tree and then someone put it on the bench. And then other reports have said the phone was found on the bench. And I think that makes a difference. A phone on the floor is a lot different than a phone on a bench, because a phone on a bench could be, she was listening to it, she was sitting on the bench, right, just listening to her Teams call, you know, just staring into space, and she put her phone on the bench and it was on loudspeaker, and maybe she was cold and maybe she got up and to stretch her legs, and she went down the bank, she slipped down the bank, she fell in the river. And that's why Willow, when she was found, she was there, agitated, worried, was the quote that was used by the person that found her. But if the phone's on the floor, that's even more, that's more concerning. Because if you drop your phone, and if the phone was at the tree, right, so let's remind ourselves where things are in relation to places. So tree's right, oh, tree's not on that one. Tree's right there. So if the phone's near the tree, it's almost like she was heading for the gate and she dropped her phone, maybe near the tree. You know, she was kind of just walking around, heading for the gate, dropped her phone. Now, what do you do when you drop your phone? What do? You instantly pick it up, right? Now, I semi-regularly drop my phone. You instantly, you know, it's an expensive piece of kit, isn't it, your phone? You instantly pick it up. You don't dawdle about, do you? But then the harness, Willow's harness, was found halfway down this banking. So if the phone's found at the tree and Willow's harness is found halfway down the banking, down the embankment here, not down the bank, the bank's a sheer drop, but down this banking area, then that's weird. That's weird. That's like something happened that was unexpected. She wasn't just sitting there listening to her Teams call, got up to stretch her legs or got up to play with Willow, or it screams to me that something untoward happened, that she dropped her phone and didn't have time to pick it up, or dropped her phone and didn't realize she dropped it. And then why was the harness halfway down the bank? So I got to speculating maybe she was heading for the gate along here. She saw Willow. This is just a speculation. Saw Willow heading for the bank and didn't want Willow to jump in. And Springer Spaniels can be reckless. So you wouldn't want Willow to jump in. I kept Cassie on a line. You can see Cassie's line right here. Because I didn't want her to be reckless. Once I got there and I realized she wasn't going to jump in, she didn't even try. She was pacing up and down this bank trying to find a place where she could get in, and she wouldn't jump. But maybe Nicola panicked. Maybe because we've heard that they put Willow's lead and harness back on at this gate. Right? That's what we've heard. So maybe she's heading for the gate. She turns around, sees Willow heading for the bank, shouts for Willow, right? Runs after Willow, drops her phone, doesn't have time to pick it up, has the harness in her hand because, you know, where else is she going to put it? I put my leads around my neck, but, you know, a harness is a little bit more difficult to put around your neck. So she'd be holding the harness. So she runs down the bank, getting Willow, and slips and drops the harness, tries to right herself, but ends up in the river. Now, that is an accident that could well have happened. And it could have happened to anybody. It could have literally happened to anybody. Right? So that's the kind of line that I've been thinking about. You know, all these little details considered. That's the kind of line I've been thinking about. Heather, can anyone else only see your own comments in chat? No, everybody can see everybody's comments. You are not banned. If you were blocked, you wouldn't be able to comment at all. So you're not blocked and people can see your comments, Heather. So it's understandable, isn't it? Given that, you know, this bank was slippery, given that the harness was halfway down here and the phone was on the near the tree, like here, that she's just walking along, tries to get Willow. Willow runs to the bank, doesn't want to go home, right? And she drops her phone, doesn't have time to pick it up. She runs down the bank, drops the harness, slides into the river, and that's that. But we've got to consider is it possible that alcohol is a factor? Or is it just something that the police mentioned because it was part of their line of thinking? That they classed her as high risk and vulnerable because Paul made this statement that she'd had alcohol problems in the past. And once they checked their records, then they knew that just 17 days before they'd been to their house. Right? They'd been to their house. And so they're going to be thinking potential foul play. They're going to be thinking suicide. They're going to be thinking a drunken woman having an accident, because obviously if alcohol is an issue for this person, then it's going to increase their risks of having an accident. But Nicola's not here to be able to breathalyze her and get her blood alcohol level, is she? So for me, time of day is very important. That if you've got an alcohol problem, like I said, it doesn't mean to say that you're drunk all the time, right? It doesn't mean to say that you are, a hazard to yourself and others all the time. And she might well have taken the 10th of January police call as her wake-up call. And we don't know. She might have been sober for the last 17 days and been doing really well. So we don't know. We don't have too much details, Debbie, but what we do have is this statement from Lancashire Constabulary. So in a statement following the press conference, the force said, can you see that? Yeah. The force said, sadly, it's clear from speaking with Paul and the family that Nicola had in the past suffered with some significant issues with alcohol. So obviously caused her problems in the past. Which were brought on by her ongoing struggles with the menopause, and that these struggles have resurfaced in recent months. This has caused some real challenges for Paul and the family. As a result of those issues, a response car staffed by both police and health professionals attended a report of concern for welfare at Nicola's home address on the 10th of January. That's all we've got. That's the statement from Lancashire Constabulary. No one has been arrested in relation to this incident, but it is being investigated. So no idea. That's the statement from Lancashire Police. And they said they hope that it would avoid further speculation, but I think it's made the speculation worse, if anything. Because now people will be saying it was a domestic, he's murdered her, they had a fight, she fell down the stairs, he pushed her down the stairs and he's got rid of the body. All of that is going to be exacerbated by this new detail. However, we do have to address it. We do have to address it. Like I always say, if new information comes along, I am happy. No horse in this race, no skin off my nose, right? Whatever happens, whatever happened to Nicola, as long as she's found, I just want her found. I'd like her found alive, but if she's deceased, I would at least like her found so that she can be laid to rest in a dignified manner, and her family can mourn her with, rather than having to wonder for the rest of their lives what happened to her. I want her found for that reason. But how and why, the circumstances, it's no skin off my nose, which it turns out to be. Just because I think she's in the river, if it turns out she's not in the river, it's not gonna hurt me, right? I'll be very surprised. I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked if she's found not in that river. I would be shocked. I do think she's in the river. I absolutely do think she's in the river. But up to this detail coming out, I thought this was an accident. But now I do have to consider that new detail and add that into my theory. Could it be relevant? It may well not be. It may well not be. Right? She may have been sober for the last 17 days and she's literally been feeling good, and she went for a walk and she slipped in the river. And it's as simple as that. Now, it would be a mistake. I put in the title of this live, Mistakes in the Case, because I think people have made a lot of mistakes in this case, jumping on things that couldn't possibly have happened or refusing to accept details that could well have happened. I think social media has been a problem, but quite honestly, it's mainstream media that I've had more of a problem with. I mean, yeah, Twitter winds me up, but for me, social media, in this instance, I think that all the social media speculation has been driven by mainstream media. I really do think that in this case, that's what's happened. So if the police want to blame social media for the distractions, then they also need to include within that mainstream media. They've been as bad, or if not worse in my opinion, because they get much bigger coverage than any social media channel does. No, I'm not blaming anyone. I'm saying, in my opinion, it's been a problem. The media has been a problem in this case. It's caused the family hurt. It's caused a whole lot of confirmation bias. And it's not helped, right? It's not helped. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just saying it's not helped. And it's been hurtful. But in terms of the investigation, then I think the police have done all they could do, quite frankly. Quite frankly, I do. I think they've done all they could do. And they're still continuing to search. And people who go missing in waterways are notoriously difficult to find. I discussed this earlier. I'm not going to reopen this, but I talked about the rivers in the northwest of England being treacherous, absolutely treacherous, and very difficult to find people in them because of what I call Lancashire mud. Inland, it's clay, but as you get out towards the coast, the clay gets mixed with sand and silt, and it's horrible, right? And all of our rivers in the northwest of England are silted up. They used to desilt them, right? But I don't think they do anymore. So the River Wyre is very silted. The River Dee that separates England from Wales is really silted. Even the Mersey's silted, and that's a big, big river. The Ribble Estuary, it's the nearest river to me, that's silted. Not as bad, I don't think, but it is silted. So anyway, that's what I think that's what the problem is. But when people are lost in waterways, particularly rivers, particularly tidal rivers, then you're not going to find them until the river gives them up. The river decides. The river will decide when to give her up. And I do think she's in the river. But back to the alcohol issue, it could well be not relevant whatsoever. This could be a detail that the police released about her being vulnerable and them having, classing her as high risk because of the vulnerabilities. And then, because they've seen this massive amount of speculation, then they've come and released this statement saying what we meant by vulnerabilities was she had an alcohol problem. But in an attempt to avoid speculation, but it will have made it worse. It will have made it worse. I wish they hadn't have said I wish they'd not mentioned that. I think it's a mistake on their part to mention that they classed her as a high-risk, vulnerable individual. I don't know whether the public needed to know it. Maybe they did. Maybe they did. Maybe they should have known it from the outset. And I could understand if you think that we should have known that from the outset. I guess I can understand why that would be important. But while the investigation was new, and I'm guessing they would hope, they were hoping that they were going to find her quickly, then they didn't want to put the family through that. I don't know. I obviously can't speak for the police. I've no idea what their rationale was, but I can honestly say this is not going to have helped the speculation. But it could well not be relevant. If it is, then we have to consider the possibilities. We have to consider the possibility, was she drunk at 8:30 in the morning? Was she a functional alcoholic who needed alcohol? If she was, then she obviously shouldn't have been taking her kids to school. But see, I don't want to believe that she would have been drunk. And I don't think she was drunk. I just don't think she was drunk. I don't know. I can't. That's just my opinion. And maybe it's because I don't want to think that she was drunk at that time in the morning. Right. I think what could be relevant, though, is mental ill health. It is ruining her good name. It is. It is. And it's really sad. It's really sad. But mental ill health should not be stigmatized. It shouldn't be having a mental health problem that ruins your good name. You should be considered a warrior. If you're battling mental ill health, you're a warrior. If you're surviving every single day with a significant mental health problem, you are a warrior. Because do you know what one of the major causes of suicide is? It's depression. One of the major causes of death amongst young people generally is suicide caused by mental ill health. So it should not be a stigma. But being drunk at 8:30 in the morning when you're taking your kids to school, well, yes, that is reputational damage, and rightly so, in my opinion. But I don't want to say I believe she was drunk. I do not in my heart of hearts think that she would have taken her kids to school and taken her dog for a walk at 8:30 in the morning, raging drunk. I absolutely do not think that was likely. But mental ill health, what can that do? It can make you careless. It can make you stressed. It can make you anxious. It can make you careless. It can make you off balance, even like physiologically. I like those are all psychological. Like stress, obviously, can have physical effects on your body, but it can also cause physiological issues coming off alcohol. If she was hitting it hard up to very recently, it can cause brain problem, like problems with your brain, like physical problems with your brain. It is absolutely. It's completely debilitating. Whose comment was that? There we go. Absolutely debilitating. Probably one of the worst disabilities that there is, serious mental ill health, because it's invisible. It's invisible. If you break your leg, everybody knows you've broke your leg, and they will help you, and they will get you a chair, and they will accommodate you if you have to, temporarily use a wheelchair or crutches to get around. If you're depressed, no one knows. unless you tell them. No one knows unless you tell them. It's withdrawal. Yeah. It's withdrawal. So alcohol can cause you psychological effects of withdrawal, cravings, and it's all physiological, but it's your psychology that's the thing that's really, that that's the problem for you. But in severe cases, it can cause seizures. It can cause blackouts. It can cause existing medical conditions to be exacerbated. So if you've got an underlying medical condition, whether that be depression or whether that be something else, something else other than mental ill health, it can exacerbate that. So withdrawal can be absolutely dreadful. So did she have some kind of medical episode? And that resulted in her ending up in the river. Did she have a medical episode? And I don't know, let's just say, she felt herself blacking out. She tried to make it to the bench. She dropped her phone. She didn't make it to the bench. She saw a willow in front of her. She didn't know where. Do you know what I mean? There's a whole new way that she could have ended up in the river. It can cause seizures. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It's been mentioned by her friends for weeks, but unsubstantiated. I've heard it, and I didn't want to talk about it because, what her friends are saying. You don't know whether they're telling the truth. You don't know whether they're her real friends. You don't know whether they're trying to just stir the pot, get their 15 minutes of fame on social media. You absolutely do not know. So I don't entertain that kind of content on my channel. But when a formal confirmation has been given by the police or by the family, or obviously by the person, like in the Summer Wells case, we've talked about, if you're following the Summer Wells case, we've been talking about Don and Candice's addictions for the last 19 months. And that's relevant because we know they are. They've been on camera. They've been there. We know they are. So they're fair game. If they've shown you that they are addicted, then and it's could be relevant to the case, then you talk about it. I don't know if she's been vaccinated. I have no idea. No idea. But could she have had a medical episode? Could she have been dizzy, blacked out? Could she have had a seizure? Who knows? Or, let's go there. Let's go there. Could she have taken her own life? Let's go there. Now, it's very speculative. In that place, at that time, I don't know. Show us your black eye again. I can't. It's dark in this room. I live stream in a little room that doesn't have a light. So in the day, it's nice because I can look out and I've got the natural light coming through my window. But when it's nighttime, I'm afraid there's no light. I do have like a lamp, but it just gives really weird shadows, so I don't like it. Or else I'd be on camera. The reason why I turned my camera off today, I put my camera on just to show everyone my black eye. So if you want to see it, just go to my previous live that I did earlier today and just watch the first 5 minutes. Was it Tilly? Yes, it was. Yes, it was. She smacked me in the face with her entire weight on one eye. Seriously. And I'm going to a wedding on Friday. So I'm going to be on wedding photos with a black eye. But anyway. So there'll be no video on Friday, guys. Depending on what time I get back and depending on whether there's any good news or important news, I might do a live stream when I get back. But there definitely won't be a video on Friday on either channel because I'm going to a wedding. My niece is getting married. So it would be a massive mistake not to consider this. I think it's been a mistake for people to talk about it. This again, just my opinion. I think it's been a mistake for people to talk about it based on so-called friends, even if what they were saying was true. Right? I didn't want to go there on my channel. It would have been a mistake for me. I wouldn't have felt comfortable. I can't say how anybody else should run the channel, but it would have been a mistake for me to do that. But now, with this detail, it would be a mistake not to consider it. So could she have taken her own life? Now, people said that she was perfectly normal, that she was laughing and joking. I think it was the last people to see her early on in the case. I showed you the quote yesterday in my video. She was laughing and she had a laugh and a joke with them. Her boss said that she was perfectly normal. She emailed her boss at 8:53. She logged into her Teams call at 9:01, and it was like an informational giving half hour. So, you know, people were just logging in to listen. So she wasn't required to have her camera on or her mic on or anything like that. So she could walk along listening to it. And all was normal. However, people do take their own life, and everything was normal. So for me now, taking her own life is back on the table. So I do still think she's in the river. I absolutely think she's in the river. But I have not entertained that possibility up to now because there was nothing in this narrative, in anything that we've heard, that would suggest that she was suicidal. Nothing that has come out until now would suggest that. But a significant mental health problem, whether that's caused by alcohol or whether alcohol's a contributor, whether it's caused by hormonal changes resulting from the depression, from the menopause, or whether it's something else entirely, that has now entered the narrative of this case. So is it possible that she took her own life? And I would imagine that the police have very carefully considered that possibility. And they might think, because if you think they've said for some reason, like the words that Sally Riley's been using is she ended up in the river for some reason. They've not said she's had an accident and fallen in the river. They've said she ended up in the river. That is a paraphrase, but they've not said they think she has an accident. So I think, in my opinion, the police are considering this a potential suicide. And stranger things have happened. Now, would she have seen that high bank, have seen that sign? Show you the sign. The sign on the tree. St. Michael's Angling Association, danger, deep water. Now, I've said maybe she never looked up and never saw that sign. Never saw that sign. Maybe she didn't see the sign about keeping dogs on a lead because she didn't look up. I didn't notice those signs when I was there. They're in a really rubbish place. They need to be facing the gate. There needs to be a sign facing the river. It needs to be much clearer. The signage needs to be clearer at that spot. But that's maybe a learning point for whoever's land that is in the future. But Did she see that sign and just jumped? People jump off buildings. People jump off cliffs. People jump off bridges. I don't know. To me, that spot doesn't seem high enough. Like if you jump off a bridge to a heavily flowing river, then you meant it. You really meant it. If you jumped off a cliff, you really meant it. If you jumped off a building, you really meant it. Jumping down 10 feet into water that you can see the bottom of, even though it's very deceptive, but it is shallow at the bank. Like if you look at these photos, that diver there, presumably his foot's on the bank and he's being helped up by some kind of pole or something. So at the bank it's only 2 to 3 feet, whereas in the middle it's more like 10 feet in the middle. So to stand there and jump in, oh, wasn't sharing, sorry guys. This diver, presumably standing on the bottom, it's about 2 to 3 feet. So standing there and looking down and jumping in, does that feel like somebody committing suicide? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It really doesn't. I don't think it's high enough. Because if you truly, truly want to take your own life, you truly do, then you are going to jump off something high. You're going to jump off a bridge. Right? There's a bridge just down the road. But it is obviously on full view. Some people take their own life on a complete impulse. How do we know that? Because we can't, they can't come back and tell us. Well, we can tell because the survivors of suicide tell us. People who really, really wanted to die but didn't manage it. Right? People who take overdoses and don't get the dosage right and either spew it up or whatever. That spot doesn't feel like a suicide spot to me. It doesn't. Because if you look down, right, you can see the bottom at the bank. So what she'd have had to do was wade out, jump down, probably hurt herself. Jumping 10 feet, you're going to hurt yourself. She's probably broken an ankle, broken a leg. But if you're making a conscious jump, it's very different than falling, right? Because if you make a conscious jump, you're bracing, like it's just a physiological reaction that you're bracing. Whereas if you fall and you weren't expecting it, then you're going to land like a splat, right? So if she fell forwards, she's going to land like a splat in the water. If she fell backwards, I'm just thinking, if she fell backwards, she's going to have hit her head on those rocks and she probably would have been out. Out, that's it. But if you're bracing for impact, you're going to land on your feet or close to. And you're probably going to break an ankle. You might fall forward and brace with your arms, and you're going to break your wrists. But then you've got to then wade out to the deep water and not fight, because once you're drowning, it's just your natural reaction that you fight. However, she was wearing heavy clothes, so I don't know. For me, I don't know about you, but for me, I don't think that spot screams suicide to me. So I'm still going to retain an accidental fall in the river as my number one theory, but suicide has gone up because it was 95. No, I'd say it's close to 99% accident in the river, and then everything else 1%. But most of that 1% is going to be a very bizarre, elaborate abduction. And then suicide and just walking away, just minute, because nothing that I've heard over the last 20 days told me that Nicola wanted to leave her family, either permanently or by walking away and, you know, being alive and just being alive somewhere, like walking away from her life. Nothing told me that that was something that was on the cards. And I still don't think she just walked away. I really don't. I don't think she was abducted. If she was abducted, it would have to be a very elaborate plan. And I don't know who would have the motive for that. I'd need a lot more information for that to go up any more than it currently is. But suicide is now forming most of that 1%. So I'm still 99 or maybe 95%. And maybe 4% suicide, 1% abduction. Maybe. But I just think it was an accident. I think, and maybe the alcohol is not related whatsoever at all. Depression's not related whatsoever at all. It was just a normal day. Dr. Grande has made a lot of erroneous videos. I don't watch his videos. I've only watched a handful when people have directed me to them. But in my opinion, I don't watch his videos. That's all I'm saying. I don't think she was abducted. I really do not think she was abducted. For all the reasons that I've talked about forever. I do. I believe it's an accident. I do. However, it is an interesting detail, and it would be a mistake not to at least consider it. So just to finish, because I want to go back to Murdoch, I think it will have started. I'm going to have to rewind. I just want to finish with this statement, because I mentioned a video yesterday. I mentioned it again today, that the St. Michael's Angling Association have commented about that stretch of river being dangerous. So this is a new statement that's come out from St. Michael's Angling Association, based on, you know, the fishermen that people think are suspicious. And anyway, so this is a representative from the Angling Association made a comment. I think I got this from Mail Online. So the angler stressed that no fishermen were there on January 27th, the day Miss Bulley went missing, adding, the only people that were on the river that day were dog walkers. I can guarantee you that. The man who has been fishing in the river for decades, so the angler who's been fishing in the river for decades, said if Miss Bulley did fall in the water, anyone walking along the bank would not have seen her. He insisted, I hope she hasn't gone in the river for the sake of the kids, but if she did, she would have been dragged under. If a body goes in, it's going to sink. She had 2 big coats on, wellies and jeans. A body would stay down and get taken out by undercurrents. That is an angler from the St. Michael's Angling Association who has fished on that river for decades, knows that river better than anybody, maybe. So I wanted to finish with that, because I do keep mentioning the St. Michael's Angling Association, and it is them who put this sign up on the tree. So they're very aware of that stretch of river being deceptively deep. The banks are steep, and it is full of undercurrents. It's coming up to the weir, and it's just a strange part of the river. It's just after the confluence, so it gets a big rush of volume because one river joins another. The River Brock joins the River Wyre, and it gets a big volume of water, and then it's just before the weir. It's dangerous. It's got these undercurrents in it. So I do think she's in the river. I do. And it will be a massive job to find her until the river wants to give her up. So although suicide has gone up a little bit in my kind of, estimation, I still think this is a tragic, tragic accident. That explains the situation better than anything else. I think abduction, just too elaborate, too difficult. I can't see a motive. And I really don't think her family have murdered her. But maybe if the case progresses any further, maybe more details will come out, and I'll revise my probability estimates further. But at least for the time being, the tides and the river will decide, I think. Exactly. The river will decide. Nature is very powerful. We underestimate nature. We really do. Anyway, guys, I'm going to go back to Murdoch now. So thank you for joining me. I don't know that I had any donations. If a donation or two have crept in and I've not acknowledged it. Oh yeah, I did at the beginning, and I did acknowledge it. So thank you so much. Welcome to the new members. Thank you to the mods as always. And I'll be back tomorrow as normal with a video. And there is a video on Michelle Walks, if you've been following the Idaho 4 case that you might have missed. That came out this afternoon. So go and check that out if you're following the Idaho 4 case. There'll be a video tomorrow on this case, Nicola Bulley. Friday, there won't be a video because I'm at a wedding, and maybe a live, but maybe not. All right, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'm going back to Murdoch. Bye, guys.